Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me this Thursday, October 19th, 2023, Michael Myers' birthday. Just a random fun fact to start this video segment off. As you can probably tell due to my little bit of an animated personality as we get started with this segment, I am feeling markedly better than I have been over the last 24 hours. So you know what that means, guys? A longer-winded video. So fasten those seatbelts. We're going to be diving into a lot of details, not only with tropical storms soon to potentially be Hurricane Tammy bearing down on our Lesser Antilles, but we're also going to talk about that big old Halloween entity that I've been highlighting for the last few videos because things just continue to get more and more interesting. So let's get started on our true visible satellite shot. And the reason I start with this is because we've seen some pretty good organization with this system over the last couple of days. You can see a very pronounced center of circulation, good cyclonic curvature around the wind field with this, but I also want you guys to pay close attention to all this open cell cumulus flowing out of the east towards the northern portions of this storm. What that is a modified polar high that is pretty much parked, and hard parked at that, over the central and eastern parts of the Atlantic Ocean, which is also what's helping to spark all the copious amounts of thunderstorm and convective activity just out ahead of the northwestern quadrant of this storm that's already unfortunately amping up our rain chances for the northern Leeward Islands. That doesn't really do us any favors, especially as this system gets closer and closer to landfall. The reason I bring this up is if you look, we have a somewhat lopsided system once again. This is definitely looking a little healthier than we saw with Tropical Storm Philippe a few weeks ago, but a lot of the thunderstorm activity is going to be off to the south. You can see very good inflow along the southern periphery of this storm, very good outflow as well, indicated by that high-level cirrus blow-off moving in an anticyclonic or clockwise fashion around the center of circulation. And it's because of that polar air to the north of it getting wrapped up into the northern apex of this system that we're not seeing a fully symmetrical storm on our hands. It is fighting against it. It's definitely organizing, and I do see the potential for a Category 1 hurricane making its way into those Leeward Islands over the next 24, 36 hours, but we do have something trying to work in our favor, and it's helping to diminish a lot of the more potent feeder banding we could be seeing on the north, northwest, and even the northeast quadrant of Tropical Storm Tammy. Now, this is going to continue to play a role in the system's development. It is reducing the amount of shear out there because we have a broad amplitude ridge to the north parked, helping to steer it to the west-northwest, but on the contrary to that, that modified polar air, all that dry air, if I were to switch over to a water vapor satellite shot, you'd see it funneling into the center of circulation. Because it's continuing to strengthen and deepen down over those hot waters, we're not really seeing it ruin or tarnish the center or the symmetry of this storm outside of simply washing out all the thunderstorms that could be feeding into it along the north side of it. So this is going to play a role in exactly what happens with our islands as this tracks west, west-northwest, and hopefully eventually to the northwest. We're switching over to windy.com because if you did not tune in for my live stream yesterday, I made sure to highlight that a lot of this storm is loaded off to the north and the northeast. The reason being is not necessarily because of that traditional right front quadrant we typically associate with tropical systems, but it's also the interaction between this very aggressive low pressure that continues to deepen or undergo further strengthening over the next couple of days as it prepares to make landfall somewhere over the Leeward Islands. It's also in part due to the interaction of this low and that high pressure over the central Atlantic. They have a very strong high. I believe last time I checked an analysis chart, it was somewhere between 1024 and 1026 millibars. So as this system deepens and that high pressure to its northeast continues to hold strong, we're seeing a very strong pressure gradient force in between these two systems, which is why you have such an expansive wind field. You can see here on windy.com from the center all the way up to the north, even surpassing the latitude line of our northernmost Leeward Islands. I also have this up because if you track this out, I'll go ahead and draw it with my pen as well. Let me go ahead and get a good ink so you guys can see. If we track this off like so, and we follow that projected window of movement, a lot of those winds, at least based on the current indications by National Hurricane Center, should stay off to the north of most of our islands. Unfortunately, a few of you out there could definitely see tropical storm, if not very low-end hurricane force gusts as this comes closer, so we're going to have to keep a very close eye on satellite and radar imagery to see how far to the west or how far to the north this system jogs. The deeper it becomes and the stronger it gets, it is going to want to move poleward faster, so we also have that little bit of a pro working in our corner in this case, but we're definitely going to have to keep a close eye on all of our live data. Yesterday during my live stream, I urged all of my viewers down there in the Leeward Islands, or anywhere in the Lesser Antilles for that matter, if you have a radar or a satellite source, whether it be on a mobile device, an iPad, a television, a computer, anything out there that you could keep close to hand in between these video segments from us to watch as those storms begin to roll in, that's going to be your best friend as we go over the next 24 to 48 hours. This is definitely looking like a Friday afternoon into Saturday morning event for everybody out there, and then Lord willing, by Saturday Saturday night into early morning hours of Sunday, the worst should be over. Now, in comparison to what National Hurricane Center has out there, we're using the GFS ensembles. Today, unfortunately, I'm not able to make my video in time to get all the Euro-populated data in at this time, but we're going to go off of the GFS because after all this time, the GFS is finally in cahoots with all of our other model platforms. Guys, you know, to tell you the truth, I haven't been using the GFS a lot for this system because for the last 7 to 10 days now, it's missed the mark almost entirely up until the last 24 hours now before landfall. And the reason I want to use our ensembles as opposed to the deterministic plot is even though National Hurricane Center has it scraping through Antigua, Barbuda, maybe areas of Montserrat, St. Kitts, and Nevis, I think we could definitely see it jog a little bit further to the west and put the likes of Dominican and Guadeloupe under the gun for a more direct hit by that center of circulation and those strongest core of winds just off to the north and northeast of that center of circulation. You track this through time and you can see a lot of our ensembles by 6Z, 21 October, Saturday. That is approximately 3 a.m. for those of you out there, Atlantic Standard Time. This is about a 3 a.m. time frame. We could see that center wandering over the northern Leeward Islands. And as you track this through, you can see a lot of the ensemble members go right over top our northernmost islands. So I'm talking to you guys out there in Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis. We're looking at Saba, St. Martin, St. Martin. We're also looking at St. Barthélemy. Definitely Antigua and Barbuda are going to be in the strongest wind field with this as well. And unfortunately, that's going to be the strongest area of thunderstorm activity with this as well because of the structuring of this storm. And we can't rule out the Windward Islands as well because this is a southerly favored storm. We have our strongest winds to the north, but because we have a lot more pertinent inflow and more warm conditions to support feeder banding on the south side of this system, like we saw with Philippe, we're going to see a lot more of our aggressive feeder bands working their way through the Windward Islands. So from Trinidad, Tobago, all the way up to the north towards St. Lucia, Martinique, we're going to see some very potent bands rolling through there and some very aggressive thunderstorm activity as the system tracks to your north. All this is looking to go down starting at about 3 p.m. tomorrow. That is going to be my forecast, guys. 3 p.m. tomorrow is when we'll really start to see the initial onslaught of Tammy begin to work its way into those Leeward, Windward Islands. And then as we get closer to 9 p.m. and closer to midnight even, as we transition into Saturday morning is when things are really going to hit the fan, and that's when you need to be sheltered in place and taking preventative measures to stay indoors, hunker down, and just ride this bad boy out. I hope a lot of you out there have been doing your preventative maintenance, have been doing all your prep work and getting a plan in place and your emergency prep all complete. Once the watch is out, you should have been doing that already. And if you guys have not been doing so, I urge you to take advantage before the warning is issued. Just an FYI, when the watch goes out, wherever you are, not only in our Lesser Antilles watching this, but anywhere during tropical season or even in thunderstorm season in the mainland United States, when the watch goes out is when you really want to make sure your preps are getting started and wrapped up, because the watch means conditions are there for things to go downhill. It's when the warning hits that those conditions are going to happen and they are imminent. So you don't want to prep when the warning goes out, guys. You want to prep before the watch. You want to prep during the watch, because the watch is going to encompass a much larger time frame than a warning will. The warning means conditions are imminent. They are coming. The watch is simply keep an eye out. We're monitoring, start preparing just in case that warning does go out. For those of you who may get the two mixed up, it used to happen a lot during Air Force weather, believe it or not. When the watch would go out, people would panic thinking things were happening. And it's like, no, guys, the watch means that we're watching closely, hence the term watch. We're monitoring, and we will issue a warning to let you know when things are ready to settle in. So start prepping, start gearing up in case things need to close down, move your aircraft indoors, get your personnel off the flight line, and all that good stuff. I'll tell you stories more so in our tropics talk. We're moving on to weather nerds because I can get up close and personal to each of these islands. And as you can see, as we go through tomorrow, this is 6Z Friday morning. So this is about the 3 a.m. time frame Friday. All that thunderstorm activity happening to you guys north is not helping us at all in terms of the flooding conditions. The Euro is already predicting we could see anywhere between 1/4 to 1/2 inch of rain with those thunderstorms currently barreling through. And then as Tammy comes in, we'll go ahead and go one more day in time. We'll go 48 hours into the future. This is after a landfall has occurred and that system is moving through the Leeward Islands. You can see a lot of our areas in terms of Montserrat, Guadeloupe, Antigua, and Barbuda could see anywhere between 1 inch to 2 inches of rain, at least as that system tracks through. A lot is going to be riding on how far to the west this system goes. The Icon, the Canadian, and the Euro are thinking we could see a more direct hit and a bit a bit. I'm talking to maybe a fraction of a centimeter on a chart if you were to look at it up close of a westward jog, putting a little bit more of the impacts closer to St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat, Antigua, Barbuda, and even just a little further to the south near Guadeloupe and Dominica because of where that center is and all that northward fetch of winds and strongest tropical storm/hurricane conditions. So in my opinion, folks out there in Antigua and Barbuda, I will go ahead and put the names on this page as well, or on this video, I should say, so you guys can read it thoroughly. I'm not going to blast through it quickly. Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, even areas of Guadeloupe, you definitely want to prepare for the chance of seeing hurricane force gusts. They're definitely going to happen in our strongest convective complexes moving through there, especially overnight. Tropical storm conditions are inevitable. We're definitely going to see winds 50, 60 mile an hour, if not greater, inside the closest proximity of that center of circulation of Tammy, but we can't rule out hurricane force gusts, if not even a brief instance of sustained hurricane force winds, depending on how much more this system can deepen over the next 12 to 24 hours. For those of you down in the Windward Islands, from Trinidad, Tobago, and further to the north towards St. Lucia and Martinique, we definitely want to be watching for those feeder bands as it rolls through. This is a north and northeastward loaded storm, so a lot of the sustained and consistent impacts are going to be to your north, but as those bands and those really potent convective complexes roll through on the backside of this system, you're still going to see tropical storm conditions and the likelihood of localized flooding occurring in your area. So please take the precautions you need to now, because it's going to be here before you know it, and I anticipate the warnings are probably going to go out sometime after this video publishes, if not simultaneously alongside with it. Woo, gotta catch my breath. All right, just to reinforce when the worst conditions are gonna start to settle in, we have our 12Z icon on the left, 06Z Euro on the right. So you track this through time, it looks like both models are anticipating we'll start to see the outer bands of this system as we go through Friday night. It could happen as early as 18 Zulu for you guys. According to the icon, it looks like the Euro still has this more of a right side loaded storm. So again, I'm gonna stand firm in my prediction that around 3 p.m. you guys need to be sheltered in place, preparing for those initial waves to start working their way in. And of course, last but not least, here's our 6Z Euro, looking at the waves and the swells we could see off of this. It doesn't seem like they're going to be too intense. This is likely going to stay along the coastal regions. Of course, this is not going to help any kind of coastal inundation we see from potential mudslides, landslides, collecting of water in the lower terrain areas of those island nations. But on the same token, we're not looking at anything too severe, 10 to 12 foot swells maximum, of course, depending on where this system tracks through. That's going to be key here. And all right, I know we've done a lot of talking about tropical storm potential, Hurricane Tammy here within the next 24, 36 hours, and I want to really quickly cover my bases in terms of what Halloween is looking like out there for the Caribbean and potentially for the southeast United States and the Bahamas as well. This is our 0Z Euro, and if you've been watching these segments the last couple days, we're still anticipating that that cold pocket is going to break off of the polar front jet after that nor'easter works through. At this point in time, this is 03Z on Sunday. There goes Tammy, hopefully trekking off to the north, no longer a potential threat for our Leeward Windward Islands, or Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands for that matter. There goes our bubble of cold air getting ready to surge south. There it is, beginning to work its way over the Dominican Republic, really start to deepen down and become a modified polar entity and potentially create a surface low reflection as it tracks off to the west, entrenched under that broad amplitude ridge. Being under that ridge, as we mentioned yesterday in my Weather Center segment, it's only going to have one direction to go, and that's to the west, because that ridge is going to protect it from any kind of other larger entities from knocking it out of place or moving it to the north, to the south, or washing it out altogether. 0Z last night looked fairly interesting, and I'm very, very feverishly awaiting what 12Z will look like today, because as you track this through, there goes Tammy exiting on the right-hand side of your screen. That cold pocket works its way down, and as we begin to see modification of that, and basically what it means is from its original source region, it moves into a new, entirely different environmental area. So you have polar air moving down into a tropical region. It's going to start to manifest or take on characteristics to that environment, and that's when I say modified, because it's modifying. It came down out of the poles or in the mid-latitudes, and now we're in a more equatorial warm environment, so we're going to have some real unstable mixing going on with that phenomena. And very curious to see that the Euro actually has a closed low deepening and moving through the Bahamas at this point. I'm not blowing the whistle on a tropical cyclone, but depending on the parameters we have together, and if this holds true as we get closer to the 26th, we could see a subtropical storm headed into the Bahamas. This is our 0Z Canadian ensembles. I haven't really been looking too much at these because of the fact that they've have been trying to fire off something out of the Caribbean, and it hasn't held true until now. So as you go through, there goes Tammy ejecting off into the central Atlantic. Some of these ensembles still want to track it to the west, so we're monitoring closely. Here's this giant blob of whatever the case may be with this. That doesn't seem to be unfolding at all according to satellite imagery out there in the Caribbean. But take a look as we get into the 27th and the 28th. Take a look at all this agreement we have for something to the south of Haiti, to the southeast of Jamaica. If you switch over to the Canadian model now and you track this through time, it's very interesting that as that bubble of cold air comes down, the Canadian solution right now is developing a tropical cyclone and pushing it towards Jamaica. Now, truthfully, I can buy into either of these solutions. It's still going to be a monitoring trend with this, and I want to pay close attention to it because we have Tammy working its way through that region, just like we saw with Philippe. We don't need any additional rainfall or any additional severe conditions out there for you folks starting the recovery process after Tammy can get up out of there. But on top of that sharp temperature discontinuity we have between our polar air over the eastern half of North America and our still very dense, warm, moist air out over the Atlantic, especially the Caribbean being untapped of any tropical cyclone activity, I can see either of these scenarios playing out. We have that wave moving through, and as that cold pocket comes down, what it's going to do is create a Rex block underneath that broad amplitude ridge. So a lot of our shear is going to stay confined to the Gulf of Mexico, the northern periphery of Florida, and the mid-Atlantic states before it rides the apex of that ridge. So the Caribbean becomes a lot more favorable of an environment in terms of our wind shear. We have the great sea surface temps and the ocean heat content out there, and we have plenty of moisture to go around for something to get its act going. I'm still leaning towards a subtropical entity with that cold pocket moving across the Caribbean, but I can't rule out the fact that our Canadian ensembles are singing in unison with our Canadian model at 12Z, pushing some kind of a tropical entity through the Caribbean Sea after that cyclone can come down, bring in a little vorticity, and get that wave, or the waves we've been monitoring for the last couple days, moving through that general region, spinning and deepening. We'll go ahead and conclude the video with our 12 Zulu GFS because thankfully, even though it has a horrendous track record with Tammy up till this point, the GFS has a very comfortable middle ground for both possible solutions right now. You can see our upper-low entity begins to create a very large, broad, low-level spin across much of the Antilles and the greater Antilles, for that matter, of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, edging its way into the Bahama Islands as well. You track this through time and you can see our tropical wave also trying to get going in the Caribbean. So again, the GFS is being very wishy-washy about it. It doesn't show anything significant popping off just as of yet, but you can see it tries to organize something right around that same general area as the Canadian model. So again, a very nice happy medium between models. So regardless, it looks like development. We can check that box here very soon. I want to get a couple more deterministic runs in and see what our ensemble starts to do with this. We're definitely going to be tracking something for Halloween time, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to wrap up today's segment of Weather Center Nazario. I cannot thank you guys enough out there for all your positive wishes, your positive prayer power that has helped get this bug out of my system. I feel so much better today, and I can't wait to be back up to working capacity as soon as tomorrow, if not, maybe even tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow for our 6 p.m. full Weather Center segment and our Tropics Talk at 8 p.m., where we're definitely going to digest exactly what's happening live with Tropical Storm and or maybe even Hurricane Tammy and our Lesser Antilles nations, as well as what we have on the horizon to potentially end the hurricane season, whatever this system decides to take shape as, whether it be a subtropical, non-tropical, or even a tropical cyclone. It goes without saying, a lot of our model data suggests we still may have something either in the Atlantic or the Caribbean that needs to be monitored as we go over the next couple of weeks. Folks, once again, I'm very grateful for everyone's positive wishes. I can't say that enough. I'm not going to go ahead and ramble on too much about that. Just understand that it is very, very genuinely appreciated. It goes without saying, you guys are the lifeline and blood of this channel. I love interacting with each and every one of you. We'll see you again tomorrow afternoon for our next update segment. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Stay safe out there for my folks watching out in the Caribbean as Tammy comes through. We're going to have your back every step of the way. I can guarantee that. Until next time, guys, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.